Congratulations, Paige. The lab results are in. You are a perfect match for Logan, and we have already scheduled the surgery for tomorrow morning, so do not bother saying no. My mother said this in front of 30 guests at her 30-year anniversary dinner, her voice cold and entitled. I am Paige Whitaker, 28 years old and 4 months pregnant, a fact my family chose to ignore so they could carve a kidney out of me for my brother. I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply looked at my watch and waited for the clock to run out on their lies. Before I tell you how I dismantled their perfect plan, please like and subscribe, but only if you believe a mother love should never have a price tag. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and what time it is there right now. Now, let me take you back to the beginning of the end. The anniversary party was supposed to be a celebration of 30 years of my parents' marriage, held at the historic Mercer Inn. As a professional event coordinator, I had spent 5 months meticulously planning every detail. I chose the ivory linens, the gold-rimmed plates, and the scent of white lilies that filled the ballroom. I did it because, for 28 years, I had been the daughter who fixed things. I was the one who stayed late to clean up after Logan's parties. I was the one who managed the family's estate taxes while my brother spent his inheritance on sports cars and failed business ventures. My brother Logan is 24. In our mother's eyes, he is a golden god who can do no wrong. In reality, he is a man who has never worked a single 40-hour week in his life. 6 months ago, the narrative changed. Logan was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney failure. Or so they said. The news hit the family like a physical blow. Suddenly, the household revolved around his dialysis schedules, his low-sodium diet, and the desperate search for a donor. My mother, Martha, became a woman possessed. She didn't just want a donor, she wanted a Whitaker donor. She told me it was a matter of blood and legacy. She said it was the only way to ensure the kidney wouldn't be rejected by Logan's supposedly fragile system. I remember sitting in their living room 3 months ago, my hand instinctively resting on my stomach. I had just found out I was pregnant. My husband Julian and I had been trying for 2 years. We were ecstatic. We were terrified. Mother, I had said, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and hope. Julian and I have news. I am 12 weeks pregnant. The room went silent. My father Arthur didn't even look up from his newspaper. My mother didn't offer a hug or a word of congratulations. Instead, she set her teacup down with a sharp click against the saucer. Well, she said, her eyes narrowing as she looked at my midsection. That is certainly inconvenient timing, Paige. Have you thought about what this does to Logan's timeline? I was stunned. Logan timeline? Mother, this is your first grandchild. Logan life is at stake, Paige, she snapped. A pregnancy is a choice. His illness is not. We will just have to see what the doctors say about the extraction during your second trimester. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. That was the first time I realized that to my parents my body was not mine. It was a warehouse of spare parts for their favorite child. Julian was furious. He told me we were done with them. He told me we would go no contact. But I was the fixer. I thought I could bridge the gap. I thought if I planned the perfect anniversary party, if I showed them I was still the loyal daughter, they would see my humanity. I spent $60,000 of my own savings to fund that party because my father claimed their liquid assets were tied up in Logan medical bills. I worked through morning sickness and exhaustion. I coordinated with 18 different vendors. I wanted them to love me as much as they loved the idea of Logan being healthy. The day of the party, I arrived 4 hours early to supervise the floral arrangements. I was in the small office behind the ballroom checking the seating chart when I heard voices in the hallway. It was my mother and our family physician, Dr. Halloway. He had been our neighbor for 20 years. I had trusted him with my life. The girl is hesitant, Martha, Dr. Halloway said. I could hear the rustle of papers, and the husband is being difficult. If we wait until after she gives birth, Logan might lose the window for the insurance payout. She won't be hesitant once I announce it publicly, my mother replied, her voice smooth and calculating. She hates a scene. If I tell the whole family and our business associates that she is the hero, she will walk into that operating room just to keep up appearances. She has always been desperate for my approval. I'll use that. And the pregnancy, the doctor asked. A complication we can manage, my mother said. The priority is Logan. He needs that surgery tomorrow. I have already signed the consent forms as her medical proxy from that old power of attorney she gave us when she was 21. She never revoked it. I sat in the dark office, my heart hammering against my ribs. My breath came in short, jagged gasps. They weren't just asking for a sacrifice. They were planning a theft. They were willing to risk my life and the life of my unborn child for an insurance payout and a brother who had never whispered a word of thanks. I looked at my silver stopwatch sitting on the desk. It was a gift from my grandfather, the only Whitaker who had ever truly seen me. I pressed the button. The mechanical ticking was the only sound in the room. I realized then that I couldn't fix this family. You cannot fix something that was designed to break you. I walked out of that office and into the ballroom. I straightened my dress. I put on the mask of the perfect hostess. I greeted the guests. I laughed at the jokes. I watched as my mother took the stage, glowing in her silk gown, her eyes searching for me in the crowd. When she made that announcement, the one that felt like a death sentence, she expected me to crumble. She expected me to nod and play the martyr. But as she spoke those cruel words, I felt something shift inside me. The daughter who wanted love died in that moment. The woman who would protect her child was born. I reached into my clutch and felt the weight of my phone. It had been recording in my pocket since I heard them in the hallway. I didn't say a word. I didn't cause a scene. I just looked at my mother and smiled. It was the smile of a woman who was already gone. I had 12 hours until the scheduled surgery. 12 hours to turn their perfect match into a total nightmare. The applause followed my mother's announcement like a wave of suffocating heat. 30 faces turned toward me, their eyes filled with a terrifying, expectant admiration. They saw a saint, I saw a firing squad. My father raised his crystal glass, the expensive scotch catching the light. He beamed at the room, his voice booming with a pride he had never once directed at my professional achievements. To Paige, he shouted, a daughter who truly understands the meaning of family first. I stood there, my hand resting flat against my stomach, feeling the tiny frantic heartbeat of my child through my silk dress. Julian was at the bar, his face turning a dangerous shade of white. He started toward me, his fists clenched, but I caught his eye and gave a nearly imperceptible shake of my head. Not yet. Not here. I needed to be the event coordinator one last time. I needed to manage this crisis with the same cold efficiency I used for a 1,000-person gala. Thank you, Mother, I said into the microphone, my voice steady, amplified by the speakers I had rented with my own money. It is certainly a surprise. I had no idea the paperwork was already finished. My mother's smile didn't reach her eyes. It was a predator grin. She stepped close, tucking a stray hair behind my ear in a gesture that looked maternal to the guests but felt like a threat to me. Everything is taken care of, darling, she whispered, her breath smelling of expensive mints and old lies. Dr. Holloway has the private suite ready at St. Jude. We leave at 6 in the morning. Don't make a scene, Paige. Think of your brother. I didn't argue. I spent the next 3 hours playing the part. I moved from table to table accepting congratulations for a surgery I had no intention of attending. I listened to my aunts talk about how brave I was to put my pregnancy at risk for Logan. I watched my brother Logan sitting at the head table. He didn't look like a man dying of kidney failure. He was eating a thick, salt-crusted prime rib and drinking red wine, laughing at a joke my father made. At 10 o'clock I slipped away to the ladies' room and locked the door. I pulled out my phone and called Silas Mercer. Silas was 70 years old, a retired estate lawyer who had been my grandfather's closest friend. He was the only person who knew the true structure of the Whitaker family trust. Silas, I said, my voice finally cracking. I need you. Now. Paige, what is wrong? I heard the anniversary was tonight. They are trying to force me into surgery, Silas. Tomorrow morning. They are using a power of attorney I signed 7 years ago. And there is something else. I heard them talking about an insurance payout. They said Logan needs the surgery for the money. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the sound of a heavy book being opened. Paige, listen to me very carefully, Silas said, his voice dropping to a low, gravelly hum. The Whitaker Trust has a specific clause. Your grandfather was a wise man. He knew your father's weaknesses. The trust pays out a massive lump sum, $4 million. To Logan only if he undergoes a major life-saving transplant or reaches the age of 30. But there is a catch. If the donor is a family member, the trust also covers all associated costs, which your father has the right to distribute. Associated costs? I whispered. Management fees, Paige. If you are the donor, your father can legally siphon off nearly half that trust under the guise of medical management. If the donor is a stranger, he cannot touch a dime. They aren't trying to save Logan's life. They are trying to liquidate your grandfather's legacy before Logan turns 30 and takes it all. My stomach turned. It wasn't just about the insurance. It was about the millions of dollars my grandfather had intended to protect us. My parents were broke, bleeding money into a lifestyle they couldn't afford, and I was the golden ticket they needed to cash in. Can they use that power of attorney, I asked. Not if you are pregnant and the procedure puts the fetus at risk. Not without a secondary medical opinion. But if Holloway is in their pocket, he likely falsified the risk assessment. You need to get out of there, Paige. No, I said, a cold clarity settling over me. If I run, they'll just find another way to corner me. They'll sue for custody of my child, claiming I'm mentally unstable. They've threatened it before. I need to end this. I need the truth about Logan's health. Then you need his real files, Silas said. Holloway keeps the true records in a safe in his home office, not the clinic. He old-fashioned that way. But Paige, that breaking and entering. I have the keys, I said. I've been house-sitting for the Halloways every summer for a decade. I still have the emergency set in my glove box. I hung up and walked back out to the ballroom. The party was winding down. My father was toasted, leaning heavily on the podium. Logan was flirting with a waitress. My mother was counting the gift envelopes. Julian, I whispered as I found him by the coat check. We are leaving. I need you to drive. We have 3 stops to make before sunrise. Where are we going? He asked, his hand gripping mine. To find the version of the truth they didn't invite to the party, I said. As we drove away from the Mercer Inn, I looked back at the glowing windows of the ballroom. I had spent my whole life trying to keep the lights on for them. I had spent my whole life making sure their events ran on time. Now for the first time I was going to let the darkness in. Our first stop was Dr. Holloway House. The lights were off. The neighborhood was silent. The kind of silence that feels like a held breath. I felt like a criminal. But as I stepped out of the car, I realized I wasn't the one stealing. I was just taking back the right to my own skin. The air inside Dr. Holloway home office felt thick with the scent of old leather and expensive cigars. My hands were shaking as I slid the key into the lock of his mahogany desk. I had watched him sit here 100 times during family dinners, laughing with my father while they toasted to their shared secrets. Now those secrets were the only thing that could save me. Hurry, Paige, Julian whispered from the doorway, his eyes darting toward the window. The sun will be up in 4 hours. If they realize we left the hotel, they will come looking. I just need the physical file, I said, my voice a jagged edge in the silence. Holloway never fully digitized his private patient records. He is too paranoid about hackers. I found it in the bottom drawer, tucked behind a stack of mundane medical journals. A thick, cream-colored folder labeled with my brother's name. Logan Whitaker. Personal and confidential. My breath hitched as I flipped it open. I expected to see blood work showing failing organs. I expected to see a desperate medical timeline. Instead, I saw a masterpiece of fraud. The first page was a laboratory report from a clinic 3 states away. It was dated 4 months ago. Logan's kidney function was at 94%. He was perfectly healthy. The next several pages were draft versions of the fake reports Holloway had presented to the insurance company and the trustees of my grandfather's estate. There were notes in the margins, written in Holloway precise looping script. Adjust creatinine levels here to justify immediate intervention. Martha insists on the June deadline. The June deadline. That was when the first major payout from the trust was scheduled to vest. Julian, look at this, I whispered, holding out a Polaroid photo clipped to the back of the file. It showed Logan at a beach club in Cabo, holding a drink in each hand, looking tanned and robust during a week he was supposedly undergoing emergency dialysis. He is not sick. He never was. They just needed a reason to trigger the medical necessity clause in the trust so they could drain the millions my grandfather left for us. They were going to cut you open for nothing, Julian said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. They were going to put our baby at risk for a payout. Not just the payout, I said, a cold realization washing over me. The trust says that if a family donor provides an organ, the donor's future medical needs are also covered by the trust's principal. By making me the donor, they would have a legal excuse to control my finances and my health care for the rest of my life. I wouldn't just be giving a kidney. I would be giving them ownership of me. I felt a wave of nausea followed by a searing white-hot clarity. This was the family I had spent my life trying to protect. This was the mother I had sought approval from. They didn't see a daughter or a sister. They saw a resource. A line of credit with a heartbeat. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I knew how my father worked. He had friends in the local precinct. He had lawyers who could make files disappear before the sun hit the horizon. If I wanted to win, I had to use the one skill I had perfected over a decade of high-stakes event planning. I had to control the stage. We aren't going to the police, I told Julian as we climbed back into the car. And we aren't going to the hospital. Then where are we going? Paige, the surgery is in 3 hours. We are going back to the hotel, I said. And you are going to call Silas. Tell him to meet us at St. Jude Hospital at 7 o'clock sharp. Tell him to bring the trust documents and a notary. I have one more invitation to send out. I pulled out my phone and opened the group chat for the anniversary party. All 30 guests were in it. The aunts, the uncles, the business partners, and the local socialites who worshipped at the altar of the Whitaker name. I uploaded the photo of Logan and Cabo. I didn't add a caption. I just let it sit there, a ticking time bomb in their pockets. Then I sent a private message to my mother. I am at the hospital, Mother. Everything is ready. See you in the surgical wing. It was the first lie I had told her in years, and it felt like a liberation. By the time we pulled into the parking lot of St. Jude, the sky was turning a bruised purple. The hospital was quiet, a sanctuary of sterile white halls and hushed whispers. We bypassed the main entrance and went straight to the private surgical wing that my father had supposedly sponsored. I saw them through the glass doors of the waiting room. My mother was dressed in a sharp navy suit, looking like the grieving but resilient matriarch. My father was pacing, checking his gold watch every 30 seconds. Logan was slumped in a chair, playing a game on his phone, looking bored by the prospect of his own life-saving procedure. Dr. Holloway was there too, holding a clipboard, speaking in low tones to a nurse who looked uncomfortable. I took a deep breath, feeling my child kick. A small, firm reminder of what I was fighting for. I reached into my bag and pulled out my silver stopwatch. I clicked the button. Stay with me, because it only got worse from there. If you have ever felt like a pawn in someone else's game, you know that the only way to win is to flip the board. I pushed open the doors. The click of my heels on the linoleum floor sounded like a countdown. Ah, Paige, my mother cried, rushing toward me with her arms open for a performative hug. You are just in time. The anesthesiologist is waiting. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. I didn't look at her. I looked at the nurse. I need to speak with the chief of surgery and the hospital legal counsel, I said, my voice echoing in the hallway. Right now. My mother's face froze mid-smile, her arms still awkwardly outstretched. Paige, honey, you are clearly overwhelmed. The stress of the pregnancy and your brother's health is making you confused. Nurse, please. She needs to be prepped immediately. The nurse hesitated, her eyes darting between my mother-polished authority and the cold, flat stare I was giving her. I am not confused, Mother, I said, my voice projecting with the practiced clarity of an event moderator. I am the only one in this hallway telling the truth. I am 4 months pregnant. This hospital is about to perform a non-consensual organ harvest based on a fraudulent medical power of attorney and a falsified diagnosis. If you touch me, I will not only sue this institution into bankruptcy, but I will ensure every board member here is named in a federal racketeering charge. Paige, my father roared, stepping forward, his face a mottled purple. Shut your mouth. You are embarrassing this family in front of professionals. Logan is dying. Logan is not dying, Dad, I said, pulling the cream-colored folder from my bag. I tossed it onto the small coffee table in the center of the waiting room. The lab report spilled out like autumn leaves. He is as healthy as a horse. The only thing failing in this family is your bank account. Dr. Holloway stepped forward, his face pale. Those are private medical records, Paige. You had no right to them. I had every right to save my own life, Doctor, I cut him off. I know about the Whitaker Trust. I know about the $4 million payout triggered by a transplant. I know you were going to take a 20% consultation fee for facilitating this crime. I've already sent digital copies of these files to the State Medical Board and the Insurance Fraud Division. Logan finally looked up from his phone, his expression shifting from boredom to a cornered feral panic. Mom, do something. She's ruining everything. Ruining what, Logan? I asked, walking toward him. He actually flinched. Ruining your chance to buy another Porsche with my kidney? Or ruining the lie that you've ever cared about anyone but yourself? My mother tried one last tactic. She grabbed my shoulders, her fingernails digging into my skin through my dress. Paige, think of the scandal. Our reputation in this city, we will be pariahs. Do you want to destroy your father's legacy over a little money? It was never about the money for me, Mother, I said, shaking her hands off me with a force that made her stumble. It was about the fact that you were willing to risk the life of my child for a check. You didn't just want my kidney. You wanted to kill the part of me that finally grew strong enough to say no to you. Just then the elevator doors at the end of the hall chimed. Silas Mercer stepped out, flanked by 2 men in dark suits and a woman carrying a professional camera. Good morning, Arthur. Martha, Silas said, his voice like dry parchment. I believe you remember me. I am here as the executor of the Whitaker estate, and these gentlemen are from the district attorney office. The air left the room, my father sank into a chair, his head in his hands. My mother turned to the doctors, her voice rising to a shrill hysterical pitch. This is a misunderstanding. My daughter is mentally unstable. She has hormonal. The laboratory in Cabo would disagree, Mrs. Whitaker, one of the investigators said, stepping forward. We've already verified the dates of your son's emergency dialysis with the hotel records where he was seen jet skiing. I looked at my mother. For 28 years I had lived for her approval. I had curated her parties, cushioned her falls, and ignored her cruelty. I had been the perfect daughter, the tireless fixer. But as I watched her mask crumble into a mess of vanity and fear, I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction. Just a profound, hollow silence. The surgery is cancelled, the chief of surgery announced, appearing from the inner double doors with a look of pure terror on his face. Dr. Holloway, you are suspended pending a full internal and criminal investigation. Security, please escort the Whitaker family off the premises. Escort us, my mother shrieked. We donated the wing. We own this floor. You own nothing, Martha, Silas said quietly. The trust has a morality clause. Attempted fraud against a fellow beneficiary is grounds for immediate forfeiture. As of 5 minutes ago, the Whitaker Trust has been frozen. You will be hearing from the forensic accountants. Logan stood up, looking at my parents with a realization that was almost comical. Wait, the money is gone? What about my allowance? I couldn't help it. I started to laugh. It wasn't a hysterical laugh, it was light, airy, and devastating. I looked at the silver stopwatch in my hand. Time is up, I said. I turned my back on them. I didn't wait to see them being let out by security. I didn't wait to hear my mother's final desperate pleas for me to be reasonable. I walked toward Julian, who was waiting by the elevators. He wrapped his arm around me, his hand shielding my stomach. As the elevator doors closed, I saw my father shouting at my mother, and Logan staring at his phone as if it could somehow conjure back his lost millions. It was the last time I would ever see them in person. I had planned thousands of events in my life. I had managed weddings, galas, and funerals with a steady hand and a calm heart. But as the elevator descended toward the ground floor, I realized I had just finished the only event that actually mattered. I had coordinated my own escape. The morning sun was surprisingly warm as Julian and I walked out of the hospital. The air didn't smell like antiseptic anymore, it smelled like rain and wet pavement. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 28 years finally lift off my shoulders. We didn't go back to the hotel. We didn't go back to my parents' house to collect the rest of my things. I had my husband, my child, and the digital files that guaranteed my freedom. That was enough. 6 months have passed since that morning in the surgical wing. The legal battle was swift and clinical, much like the events I used to coordinate. With Silas Mercer's help, the forensic accountants stripped away the layers of my father's financial deception. It turned out they had been living on credit and hope for nearly a decade. When the trust was frozen due to the morality clause, their world collapsed like a house of cards. My parents lost the estate. They lost their standing in the city. Last I heard, they were living in a small 2-bedroom apartment in a town 3 hours away, still blaming me for their misfortune. Logan had to get a job. He is working at a car wash, finally learning the value of a 40-hour week. Dr. Holloway lost his medical license and is currently facing 10 years for insurance fraud. As for me, I stopped fixing things for people who only wanted to break me. I sold my event planning business. I realized I didn't want to manage other people's perfect moments anymore, I wanted to live my own imperfect ones. Julian and I moved to a quiet farmhouse near the coast. There are no gold-rimmed plates here, no ivory linens, just a wooden table where we eat breakfast and talk about the future. My daughter Alara was born 2 months ago. She is healthy, loud, and perfect. When I hold her, I think about that morning in the hospital. I think about the moment I chose her life over my mother's approval. It wasn't an act of revenge, it was an act of survival. I look at her and I promise her that she will never be a perfect match for anyone's expectations. She will just be herself. I still have the silver stopwatch. It sits on my nightstand, but I don't use it to count down the seconds of a crisis anymore. Sometimes I just hold it and listen to the steady, rhythmic ticking. It reminds me that time is the only thing we can never get back, and I am not going to waste another second of mine on people who see love as a transaction. If you are listening to this and you feel trapped by the people who are supposed to protect you, remember this. Silence is not loyalty. Sacrifice is not love if it requires you to disappear. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to be the one who survives. Thank you for staying with me through the darkest parts of my story. If this journey meant something to you, or if you have found the strength to set your own boundaries, please leave a comment below. I would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of truth and reclamation. Until next time, take care of yourself, because nobody else can do it quite like you.